Sikorsky HH-60 Jayhawk. The HH-60 Jayhawk is the U.S. Coast Guard's primary medium-range rescue helicopter, a platform derived from the military Black Hawk, but rebuilt specifically for overwater search and rescue. It carries a crew of 4, 2 pilots, a flight mechanic, and a rescue swimmer who deploys directly into the water to reach survivors who cannot reach the hoist themselves. Its range extends 300 miles offshore, which covers the vast majority of maritime distress calls the Coast Guard receives. The avionics package includes forward-looking infrared radar capable of detecting a human body in dark water from altitude, and a rescue hoist rated to lift 600 pounds, enough for a swimmer and an incapacitated survivor simultaneously. What defines the Jayhawk operationally is where it goes. Open ocean, night, winter swells, conditions where no other rescue platform operates reliably. The crew has performed hoists in 30-foot seas and zero-visibility weather, operating on instruments and thermal imaging alone. The Jayhawk has been the Coast Guard's backbone since 1990. In that time, it has saved tens of thousands of lives in conditions that made every other rescue option impossible. Sikorsky MH-60T Jayhawk. The T model upgrade added an integrated avionics suite that fundamentally changed how crews navigate and search. A multi-mode radar system handles simultaneous weather avoidance, terrain mapping, and surface search without the crew switching between systems. The cockpit was redesigned with glass displays that consolidate flight, navigation, and sensor data into a single visual field. But the most significant upgrade is communication. The MH-60T can interface simultaneously with surface vessels, other aircraft, and shore-based rescue coordination centers, all on separate secure channels without crew members needing to manually switch between radios. In a multi-asset rescue involving a Coast Guard cutter, a civilian vessel, and an aircraft from a neighboring district, coordination that previously required constant radio management now happens with far less cognitive load on the flight crew. The practical effect is that crews can devote more attention to the rescue itself. When a swimmer is in the water and a survivor is panicking in 15-foot seas, every second of attention that doesn't have to go to managing systems goes to managing the outcome. Sikorsky HH-60G Pave Hawk. The HH-60G Pave Hawk is the U.S. Air Force's combat search and rescue helicopter, designed to recover downed pilots and special operations personnel from hostile territory. It carries terrain-following radar and a forward-looking infrared system that allows flight at very low altitude in complete darkness, navigating obstacles by sensor rather than visual reference. It can be refueled in the air, which extends its operational range beyond any fixed-base calculation. A PAV Hawk departing an airfield can rendezvous with a tanker aircraft mid-flight and continue to a recovery location hundreds of miles further than its internal fuel would allow. What separates combat search and rescue from every other rescue mission is that the people being recovered are often in active threat environments. The Pave Hawk doesn't only land and pick up. In some scenarios, it hovers at the edge of a threat area, while the crew manages the approach, the pickup, and the departure under conditions that include the possibility of ground fire. The aircraft carries countermeasures, flare dispensers, and radar jamming systems, specifically because the threat is real and the mission requires entering it anyway. Airbus H225 Super Puma. The H225 Super Puma is the dominant long-range civilian rescue and personnel transport helicopter in the offshore energy industry. It carries up to 19 passengers, has a range exceeding 450 miles, and is certified for single-pilot IFR operations, meaning it can fly in cloud and low visibility with a reduced crew if necessary. The offshore environment demands a specific set of capabilities that no other mission requires simultaneously. The helicopter must operate far from any land base, in maritime weather that changes without warning, at night, and often over water temperature cold enough to kill an unprotected person in minutes. Every offshore rescue is a race against hypothermia as much as a race against drowning. The H225 carries a full rescue hoist system and can accommodate a medical team with stretchers in the rear cabin, converting from personnel transport to medical evacuation configuration in the field. For the North Sea, the Gulf of Mexico, and offshore operations worldwide, it has been the standard platform for decades. Boeing CH-47, Chinook SAR. Configuration. Most rescue helicopters lift one or two survivors at a time. This one can lift an entire stranded group in a single pass. The CH-47 Chinook is a heavy-lift tandem rotor helicopter, two sets of rotors, one at each end of the fuselage, that can carry up to 55 personnel and operate at altitudes where single-rotor helicopters struggle to generate sufficient lift. In search and rescue configuration, that capacity translates to mass casualty capability that no medium-weight platform can match. Its use in SAR operations became internationally recognized during the 2004 Indian Ocean tsunami, when military Chinooks airlifted hundreds of survivors from remote coastal areas across Indonesia and Thailand in operations that conventional rescue helicopters could not have conducted at the required scale. The tandem rotor design also gives the Chinook exceptional stability in hover, a critical characteristic when lowering rescue equipment or personnel into a tight landing zone. Without a tail rotor consuming power, both rotor systems dedicate their full output to lift and stability. In mountain rescue operations where hover time is extended and the landing zone is irregular, that stability is operationally significant. Leonardo AW139. If one helicopter has become the global standard for medium-weight rescue operations in the last 20 years, it is this one. The AW139 is operated by Coast Guards, emergency medical services, offshore energy companies, and military search and rescue units across over 70 countries. Its dominance comes from a combination of range, payload, speed, and the breadth of mission configurations it supports without requiring major structural modification. In rescue configuration, it carries a hoist, medical equipment, and a crew of 4. In medevac configuration, the rear cabin accepts 2 stretchers with full intensive care equipment running off the aircraft's electrical system. In offshore transport configuration, it seats 15 passengers with a range that covers most North Sea and Gulf of Mexico platforms comfortably. Sikorsky HH-3 Jolly Green Giant. Before the Pave Hawk existed, this was the helicopter that went into hostile territory to bring people home. The HH-3 Jolly Green Giant was the U.S. Air Force's primary combat search and rescue platform during the Vietnam War. A large amphibious helicopter capable of landing on water, refueling in the air, and operating deep into North Vietnamese territory to recover downed American aircrew. It pioneered the concept that became the foundation of all subsequent combat rescue doctrine, the dedicated SAR aircraft that accepts the risk of the threat environment as a condition of the mission. Previous military thinking treated crew recovery as secondary to air operations. The Jolly Green Giant was the first platform built around the explicit commitment to go back for anyone who went down, regardless of where they went down. Cayman SH-2 Sea Sprite. Most rescue helicopters operate from land bases or large platforms. This one was built to operate from the deck of a small ship. The SEO-2 Sea Sprite was designed for the U.S. Navy to operate from destroyer and frigate decks, ships too small to carry larger helicopters, extending the vessel's sensor range and rescue capability beyond what the ship itself could provide. It carried dipping sonar, torpedoes for anti-submarine work, and a rescue hoist for maritime survivor recovery. The challenge of ship deck helicopter operations is not the flying, it is the landing. A frigate deck moves in 6 axes simultaneously in heavy seas. The helicopter must match the ship's motion precisely at the moment of touchdown, then be secured before the deck pitches again. Miss the window and the helicopter can be thrown off the deck or rolled into the sea by the ship's movement. Westland Sea King. For nearly 50 years, this was the helicopter that British coastlines and North Sea oil workers trusted with their lives. The Westland Sea King entered Royal Navy service in 1969 and flew British search and rescue operations until 2016, one of the longest continuous service records of any rescue helicopter in history. It was the aircraft that responded to the Piper Alpha oil platform disaster in 1988, the Lockerbie crash recovery in that same year, and hundreds of North Sea rescues across decades of winter operations. When the Sea King was retired and replaced by the AW139 under a civilian contract, the transition involved not just new aircraft and new operators, but the transfer of that accumulated knowledge to a new generation. The aircraft was replaceable, the knowledge was not. Our Sikorsky H-65 Dolphin. The Jayhawk handles long-range ocean rescues. The Dolphin handles everything closer to shore, and it does it faster. The H-65 Dolphin is the U.S. Coast Guard's short-range rescue helicopter, operating from smaller stations and cutters where the Jayhawk size makes deployment impractical. It carries a crew of three, two pilots and a rescue swimmer, and is capable of self-deploying from a moving cutter deck, something the larger Jayhawk cannot do as readily. Every helicopter on this list was built to reach somewhere that nothing else could. Different aircraft, different ranges, different environments, but the same fundamental mission. Someone is in trouble. Everything else has failed. The helicopter goes anyway. If you want the same breakdown for military transport aircraft, that video is already up. Link in the description.